Hi, this is part 2 of the sampler GUI tutorials. We're making a GUI in processing for a basic sample trigger. And now what I'd like to do in this tutorial, among other things, is create some visual feedback. So right now the way it stands is if we click the button, it plays the sample, but there's no sort of visual feedback. So why don't we have the button flash, or also I've seen button shrink and stuff like that. Well, we'll do both. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll have it change its fill color when we touch the button. All right, so how do we do that? So right now we have our fill here. Okay, let's just go ahead and delete that, and we'll move it into the for loop. And we'll keep it out for now. So what we need is a trigger. We need to know if the button's been pressed or the button has not been pressed. So we're going to create a trigger here, and we'll make it an array as well, just like these, LRTB. So we'll make an int array, and we'll call it btrig, for example. And then we'll set it up much like these arrays, so we'll just copy and paste. So we're going to copy and paste that. We just have to make sure we update the variables. This will be btrig, and this will be btrig as well. Now what will btrig be initially? Well, let's just make it 0, because initially it won't be triggered. All right. So now we have an array of ints which will serve as triggers to change the fill of our button. And basically we can put in here then, if btrig I is equal to 1, then the fill will be the lime green. Oh no, I'm sorry, when it's pressed. Right, the 1 means when it's pressed. So let's make it, I don't know, a yellow. We can go to our color selector. Fine, I always forget what yellow is. Right, 255, 255. Let's make it yellow. 255, 255, 0. Okay. Else, so if it's not 1, then we'll make it the fill back to the lime green. Okay. So now we have to have a trigger. Well, we can do that trigger on the mouse pressed. So when we're actually pressing one of the buttons, not only will we send this message, but we'll also turn the trigger on. So we'll say btrig I, because it's still in this for loop, right? We're just adding another argument here. The btrigger that I will equal 1. Okay. So that's great, except once we press the button once, it just stays on now. It's always 1. We have no opportunity to turn it back to 0 when it's off. But we can do that on a different action here. So let's create another one. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy all of mouse pressed, because I'm going to change it to 0 on mouse released. All right, so 1 when I press it, and when I release my mouse, it'll be 0, and it'll change color back. So if I copy all that, and I do mouse released instead of mouse pressed. And we don't have to send another message on mouse released. Otherwise, when we press it, it'll play the sample, and when we release it, we'll play the sample. I mean, you can keep this in your back pocket if you want to do kind of like a roll or something like that. Like if you're doing drums and you want to play multiple samples, you go click, 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 and then you have 2 samples per press and release. Okay, but for now, we'll just get rid of that OSC message, because we're not wanting to trigger the sample on release. And we're going to change it to 0 instead of 1. So when we release it, the trigger is going to go off for that button, and it will change back to its other color. So there you go, in a nutshell. That was now some visual feedback. Okay, great. So that's wonderful. So along that vein, basically, this is the technique. You know, we've done it a couple times now in creating the buttons, and then also now in giving this visual feedback. Basically, you create some kind of trigger or some kind of a variable that will hold something, and then you change it and you iterate through it with a for loop, and then you change that particular instance of it for that particular button. So everything's tied together by that the button, by the entity, through the for loop and through the array. So that's what makes these arrays so powerful. So we're just going to keep iterating through this process. We'll have done it, half a dozen times by the end of these sets of tutorials, and it's very useful for doing GUIs or other things as well, dealing with both images or data, that sort of thing. Okay, so the other thing I'd like to do is maybe some kind of mouse over. All right, so same thing. We'll just create another int, and we can just put them all on the same line. These could be all our graphics ones. We'll say mo, and we'll create a new one just like we did this one, and we'll say mo. Oops. And then remember to change that to mo as well. And again, we'll have it all initially starting at 0. All right. And let's do a shrink. So yeah, so we actually have to do right. Okay. Maybe the best way is to have a size 1 and a size 2 up here. So instead of this, we'll call it size 1, and then we'll have a size 2. Size 2. Okay. Or maybe we should have a grow. Yeah, let's have a grow. Okay. And we'll make that 60 maybe? 62? We'll see what that looks like. 62, something like that. But now we have to update. Kind of got ourselves in a little bit of trouble because now we have to update all the sizes to size 1. We could have kept it, but that's all right. Okay. I don't think it's that much. All right. All right. Yeah. Here. Okay. Except for the rectangle there, which is okay. So now what we want to do is we want to do something similar to here with a button trigger. We're going to have a size and a size 1 and size 2. So we need a size 2 as well, size as well. So int sc, and initially we'll just make it equal to 50 as well for now. Okay. And then we're going to just change the size using size 1 and size 2. So we'll say here, before the rectangle gets drawn, if, and you can copy or paste, but I'll just type it, that's fine. And we say mouse over mo, I, equals, sorry, 0. We'll start with, let's start with on, 1. Okay, that's if it is moused over. Then sc will equal sz2, right? Okay. Else, if it's not moused over, sc will equal sc1. Okay. So this size here will alternate whether it's moused over or not between sc2 and sc1. Okay. So that's sc2 being the bigger one, sc1. So it's going to grow when we mouse over it. Okay. And now we're going to use a third kind of mouse activity. And we can probably just copy this mouse released as well. Let's do that. So we have all that information there. So instead of mouse released this time it'll be mouse moved. Okay, and we're still looping through all the buttons, and we're still seeing if it's on, if it's touching, which button it's touching. And we're just going to update a different variable, and it's going to be mo, moused over. So if mouse moved, and it's over one of these buttons, it will be 1. It'll turn on. Okay. Else, so we can put both in the same thing. If the mouse is moved and it's not over one of these buttons, then else it's going to be mo I equals 0. Okay, and that's it. So if we run that, every time we mouse over, it's going to grow. So obviously that's too huge. So let's change our size 2, but we can adjust that quite easily to say 54. I really overdid it. That might be too little. Okay. Of course, we can be, if you want to be really persnickety, you can make it just, instead of grow to the right corner there, right bottom corner, you can make it grow in general. That just takes a little bit of more manipulation. You're going to have to move it over to the left and move it, move it up. I mean, we can do that. Why don't we just quickly do that? So instead, we'll just have to actually remake the rectangle instead. Okay, so just to make it a little bit clearer, I will put these in the curly brackets, and then else instead of curly brackets. And if you're wondering why I comment there, it just tends to put else up on that same level, and I like to see it on its own line. And so we'll just copy the rectangle in there. So this is if mouse over is moused over. It will be at li minus let's see. Sorry. Well, I mean, we can hard code it. We might as well just hard code it. It's fine. We can go do a lot of trouble and do a lot of addition and subtraction. Well, let's just go. Since we're going it, we might as well go full Monty here and just go ahead and do it. So basically, we're going to take size. It's going to be, we're going to take the size 2 minus the size 1, right? So let's do that. And I'm going to say SC2 minus SC1. And we're going to take half of that. Okay. And then we're going to scoot it over that much to the left, right? Okay, so we're going to take its original x position and take half of the difference between the two sizes and scoot it over that much. All right? And then we're going to take the top and do the same thing. We're going to take and then minus, we're going to scoot it up. Okay. And it's just going to go from size 2 to size 2. It's going to be that much bigger. Okay? And then else, it's just going to be our normal rectangle, which will be size 1 instead of size. So it didn't really need that size variable. We could have kept that size and not have size 1. But we'll just keep that size 1. Okay? So if we run that, it should grow proportionally, centered like that instead of to the right corner. Okay? Hopefully you saw how to do that. I don't think it's worth belaboring that too much. It's just a little additive. And we can make it slightly bigger. Let's make it 6 until we get something that we like. Other nice mouse over is to add a stroke too. Sometimes I do that, or you make it, but this is also quite nice. Okay. Why don't we go 58? Let's see what happens there. Yeah, it's too much, I think. Let's go back to 56. Okay, so there you go. We have some nice mouse over possibilities. So there's a lot of other things we can do as well. Let's add some images. Okay, so this is a slightly more complex set of steps that we have to follow. We're going to put some images, for example, onto our icons or our little buttons. All right, and if you want to load some images, you'll put them into the data folder, or you'll create a data folder. So this is my sketch folder. How can we show this? Well, anyways, it's my sketch folder, the one that this sketch is saved in. So that's that file. This is that file. And then so within that sketch folder, you'll create a folder called data. All right, and then you can load it with whatever pictures you want to load it to be on your buttons. Okay, you can go ahead and load that. So we'll have that. We have that ready to go. And let me just double check my code here. So we'll load those as images. So we'll have p images, and then we'll have a set of strings. Okay. So the way to load, if we went to p image and look that up in reference, okay, it will show us how it does it. You declare a p image variable, and then you use the function load image, and you give it its path name. Now, if you don't give it the absolute path, if you just put the title of the picture itself, the image itself, it will presume that it's in that data folder. That's why I had you put those images in that data folder, so we can just have a path. So load image given the path name, or the image name, and then you use this image to draw it in draw. You declare image, and then you give it an XY coordinate, and you give the image name, or the variable you assign to it. Okay, so we're going to do all that, except we're going to, again, do that in the context of an array. We're going to put an array of them. All right. So we're going to make an array of p images, and we're going to call this whatever icons. Okay. And now we have to load those icons up or those images up using a set of strings. And so those will be the names of the images I have in my data folder. So I'll have a string array. Now the difference between the string array, though, I might not necessarily have the same amount of icons I do as buttons, because that button thing is very variable. Or this is very specific because I have only a certain amount of images in that folder. Okay, just to keep that in mind. This is a different, so p image will have this number of buttons. P image and string won't have the number of buttons, necessarily the number of buttons of slots. Okay, it'll only have as many as the pictures I have in my folder. Okay, so I'll say, what did I call it? Let's see. I called it icon paths. Okay, let's call it ICON path. All right, and then I'm actually going to both declare and initialize it here with the actual names of my images here in this array. So that's how you declare an array. Use curly brackets instead of square brackets. But you go ahead and just fill them in, and I'll just copy my names over because I don't have them committed to memory necessarily. So I'll paste in all those names. Okay, so this is slot number 1 will be this string JPG. Slot number 2 is this Rockstar Cage PNG. Slot number 3 is this snare top edge. Okay, so I have 3 paths in my, or three image files in my data folder. Okay, so we can just do that here. Now we're going to initialize and fill our p image, our icons array. So icons equals a new p image array, and its length really is going to be the length of the string array because these are the images I have. Okay, so it's going to be ICONPATHS icon paths dot length, and dot length will give you the length of any array, or most arrays anyways, in processing. In Java it's dot size, just to keep that in mind, but for whatever reasons we do dot length here, which is fine. And that's great. So that initializes that p image array, array of processing images. And then we were going to load those up using that load image function. So we're going to say for, we're going to run the for loop just like we've done before. int I equals 0. I is less than. Now again, it's not the exact same, so it's not number of buttons. It is number of icons or number of icon paths. So we'll just do ICONS dot length I plus plus, and it will be icons I, and that's a p image. So we have to use load image equals load, and it's going to be one of these icon paths. So it's going to be ICON paths I. Okay, so it's going to grab each of these in turn and then load that image that corresponds to the path, and then this will now be populated with those 3 images. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll draw those images over our already existing buttons. So I guess we'll have to do them in both areas. Wherever we draw the rectangle, we'll have to draw the images. Okay, and so what we're going to do is, and I guess we can make them grow with them as well. So what we'll do is we'll have the image, okay, and then we'll have the image from the icons array. So it'll be ICONS I. That will be the image that we want to draw on top of this. And but remember now, we are iterating through number of buttons, through all the buttons, but we don't necessarily have that many images. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a modulo so I can repeat the images. If we have more buttons than images, then it just repeats that order of images. Okay, so I'm just going to go modulo and then ICONS dot length. Okay, so that will go I up to the length of the icons and then repeat itself. So it'll just reiterate those 3 images over and over again until we've come up to the number of buttons. Okay, and then its location is going to be the same location as the rectangle and the same height and width. So we can just copy all of that because that's the 3 arguments it expects after the image name. it expects X, Y, and then height and width. Okay, and then we'll just end that with a parentheses. We'll do that. And the same thing goes for here too. So I could just copy this image that I just made, paste that here, and then copy this rectangle, and then replace all the X, Y, and all that information here. Okay. So that should do it. So if I run that, now every time I press it grows. Okay, you can kind of see the result, but now you'll notice, at least with certain images that have a background, my visual feedback is gone. Okay, so why don't we shrink the image a little bit? We'll do the same trick we did with the sort of grow. We'll scooch it over, we'll scooch it in from the border this time, and then we'll shrink it by double that amount, right? So if we inset it 2 pixels from top and bottom, or say even 3, then we'll shrink the width and height by 6 pixels. Okay, so we'll just do this manually. In this case, we won't bother with variables and all that because it's actually not that big a deal, and it probably won't change, right? So if this is our X right here, all that business, and at one point I understood what that was, but I don't have to worry about it right now. So I won't bother going through that and thinking about what that is. We'll just trust that it works, it's right. But what we want to do is we want to scooch it in, say by 4 pixels, oh no, like say by 3 pixels, okay? So we'll just say +3. So the X is going to be scooched to the right 3 pixels, and oh, that was the, where's my Y now? I missed the Y. Ah, sorry, this is the X. Sorry, I didn't see that comma. So we'll scooch that over by 3 pixels, and we're going to do the same with the Y anyways. We'll scooch it down by 3 pixels, okay? And then, but we're going to diminish this by 6, so we get a border. So -6 and then -6. So we get a proper border, all right? And then same thing here, -6, -6. Scooch this over by 3. Okay, and then see what happens. So we continue to have that visual feedback. Maybe that's not enough, so we can, unfortunately, when we don't have variables, you have to go change everything. That's not the end of the world. Let's do 5 then. 5, 5. This will be 10, 10, 10, 10, 5, 5. And you adjust that to your heart's content. Do you have the look that you like? That seems to be all right. And then you still get that sort of grow effect. And of course, you'll fill it out with the proper icons that correspond to your samples, or something random if you want. Okay, so that's good practice anyways for just learning to deal with images, period. And also to using, again, some additional things, arrays. So let's add some functionality to our buttons, and we'll make them also keyboard triggered as well. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'll just show you one, and then I'll multiply it as well, same thing. Okay, so if we use another built-in function, built-in method, Keypressed. Okay, we can assign a key to just about anything. And the way you do that is use the if statement, and you detect a key. So you have this built-in variable key, and it's going to look for a key, and then in single quotes you put the key that you want to use, say F for example, and then whatever's in that will only be triggered on the F key. So basically we can do what we do, our sample. So we'll grab that OSC message, and we'll grab the button trigger. So we want to make that button change as well. Okay. So we'll pop that in, and we have the button trigger as well. We're going to change that. Now, since we didn't loop through that, it's only one key, so we're not going to loop through everything. We'll have to assign it to a specific key. Let's just do the first one, 0. All right. And then, of course, it's turning the trigger on, meaning it's highlighting, it's turning yellow. However, it won't turn off, so we need something to turn it off. And luckily, we're just going to copy all that. We have a key released as well. Okay. And again, we're not sending the message on release. We're only sending a message on press. So we don't want to trigger the sample on release. And we're just going to change that trigger back to 0, so it changes back to its original color. Okay, so if we run that and just take my word for it, I'm pressing F. So I'm playing that, okay, with the F key, which is nice. Okay, so now how do we do it very quickly and easily for make a like a row of keys or set of keys for all the buttons that we have? Okay, well, it'll be very much like the image. We're going to create an array of keys, and then we're going to use that array of keys and reference its indexes. Okay, so let's, for example, we want to use that second whatever the QWERTY row. So the key is looking for a character, so we'll create an array of characters. Okay, a character array, and we'll go ahead and we'll call it keys. And we'll go ahead and declare it here, initialize it here, just like we did with our icon paths or our image names. And again, single quotes. I'm going to just do the QWERTY Q W E R T Y U I O and P. All right. There we are. So now we can iterate through those in the Keypressed and key released thing. Okay. So what we want to do really is we want to do on Keypressed, instead of assigning the key to the F, we'll just keep that there. We're gonna put a for loop above it. So for int I equals 0, but we want to iterate through not the number of buttons, but the number of keys. So we're going to say I is less than keys dot length. So this syntax, I is less than something dot length, is very common. We use that all the time because we're iterating through arrays. And then I++. Okay. And then we'll open the curly bracket and make sure to close it appropriately to contain that if statement. All right, and then if we're going to say if key equals, now keys instead, I, then we're going to play, and we're going to play the sample number that corresponds with its location in the keys array. So if you want a different order of samples, you want to use a different set of keys, you just change them in their keys array. So Q will place sample 0, W will place sample 1, E will place sample 2, etc. If I want something else to play sample 2, I'm just going to change that E to something else, whatever key I want. Okay, so that's nice to have an array you can iterate through and then change. So if keys, and then it's just going to send I, so that sample number, and then it's going to be trig I. It's going to shut on and off that button. Okay, so we're going to have to repeat this process again. So I'm just going to copy this whole thing actually, and then again do the deletes I need to do. Paste that in there. I'm going to delete the OSC message because I don't want to trigger it, and then I'm going to change this to 0 because I want to flash it off instead of flash it on. All right, now the only other thing is if you don't have the same number of keys as you do buttons, it's going to go through that, or you have more keys, sorry, if you have more keys and you have buttons or samples, oh, I guess it's okay because, oh no, it'll run up against a problem here. Trig I. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll do modulo number of buttons. All right, if that makes sense to you, and we'll let the samples sort themselves out, because if we send a sample just like we've seen with the buttons that exceeds the number of samples in our super collider, it will just continue to play the 0th sample. All right, but here this will throw an error and stop your program. So we want to make sure that the B trigs don't go bigger than the number of buttons that we have. So we just modulo num buttons. Okay, but that also just means that these same keys will be for how do I say? Oh no, it'll be fine. Yeah, it'll just basically all right, more keys than the next set of keys. Say we only have 3 buttons, then every 3. So Q, W, and E will be for the samples 1, 0, 1, and 2. R, T, and Y will control the first 3 buttons, etc., etc. It'll loop the key. So let's run this. I'll show you how that works anyways. So just to see that, so I'm just running down the keyboard. Okay. But now let's see if I change the number of buttons to say 3. Okay, Q, W, and E work, but also R, T, oops, T and Y, oops. All right, okay, because I didn't do the released. Sorry, I didn't do this on mouse release. So that's the error you'd get if you have less buttons than you have keys. Okay, but with that in place, it'll go over them, right? So if I do Q, W, E, it presses those 3, but then the next 3 buttons, R, T, Y, also controls those 3, and U, I, O, etc. P. Okay, so there you go. We'll change that back to 15 buttons, even though I don't have 15 sounds. All right, so that's great. We've done our keys, we've done our icons, pictures. Maybe I'll just show you one more thing. And again, at any point in this video, I'm sure you could have stopped. Maybe you stopped already and you're not here anymore. But it'll be a good opportunity to deal with text too. So let's think about putting some text over or under each button, something like that. Okay. Do with image. Let's have a look at the way it handles text processing. Okay, we'll call this P font, and we'll look at its reference because it'll show us all the steps. So you have a font that you declare P font as a variable. Then you load the font using create font. Okay, I actually like to use load font because in case you create a little app or something like that. I think this is the new way to do it, really. But oh, it does add it. Okay, never mind. Create font will do that already. Okay, well, good. Okay, great. Okay, so we'll use create font. I'm not sure. Okay, and sorry. Okay, well, let's see how it goes. I usually use load font, but okay, and then you declare what font you're using for text, and then you write the text out. Okay, so it's a 4-step process. All right, so let's give that a go. We'll say we'll call this font 1. Okay, and then within setup, we'll create the font. I'll just do that here. Font 1 equals create font. And then it's got to get the name of the font in double quotes. I'm going to use Monaco. And I'm not sure what the they use. This is the part I'm a little bit unsure of. They use a TTF, true type font. Must be a true type font, probably. And the size, well, let's make it 14 maybe. Let's see how that looks. Okay. Well, it'll let me know if it's not there, if I use the wrong suffix or prefix or whatever suffix. Yeah. So then we're going to load the font. We might as well just do that right under. We'll use the same font for everything. Sorry, text font, which kind of loads it. It makes that font the active font for the whole sketch. So if I wanted to use a different font at a different point, I would declare that as well, text font. But I can just do that in setup because I think I'm just using one font for this entire sketch. And then in draw, I'm going to put draw that, after the image, maybe at the bottom of the icon at the top. Let's put it at the bottom since we just have a row. Oh, well, we have to have a collection of strings that we're going to write in as well, just like these characters and such. So we'll just do a string, and we'll call it label, and we'll equal to, we'll initialize and everything here. We'll say hi-hat, hat, abbreviate hat C's for closed hat. I think the next was the kick, was it? Kick. Maybe capital. Snare. Something like that. Okay. And whatever you want. Then what we'll do is, so this is slightly trickier now because we have two different types of for loops going, but we can use the I and we'll just use a modulo here. All right. So the way to draw the text is we say text, and we're going to have to sort of mess around with this location. So yeah, in any case, let's see what happens with the default. We have to budget over a little bit or something like that. What text are we going to draw? It will be label LBL I, and again, it's going to be modulo LBL dot length. So we don't exceed the length of the label. So if we have more buttons than we have labels, then this will throw an error. If we have more labels than we have buttons, then it won't ever get to the end of our label list, which is fine. Okay, and so that's going to be the label, and we're looking for the x coordinate, which will be just the x of the rectangle. So we just copy that. And then the y coordinate, which will be the thing. Now, I think we'll have to do some centering or something like that. But I'm not going to do a width and a height. Okay. And then same thing when it's pressed. And actually, I guess same with the image. Well, we want our image to grow, but we don't want our text to grow. So let me X that out, sorry. And we just put it outside of this. We just always have the text displayed. We don't need it to grow or shrink, right? So we'll just put it there. Okay, it's just going to stay its static place. It might be black though, so we might have to put a stroke here. Or is it a fill? Right. So the fill will change based on whether it's pressed or not. But it's fine. We'll let the fill change. Let's do that. Okay, let's just see how this looks. All right. That's because we didn't set up the font? I thought we created the font. All right, okay. Something new there, but it turns out, let me just do the old, what I'm used to doing. Turns out you do have to add, and it's nice because then if you export your sketch, you have the font in your sketch folder. For some reason, it seemed to suggest that create font automatically sticks it into your folder. Maybe it does, but in any case, I'm going to go ahead and do manually create the font. Load that font. We'll find Monaco down here in my list of fonts. Monaco. There it is. And we're going to do 14. Or here, I guess you change the size here, 14. And it automatically updates that for you. And then you hit OK, and then it'll be added to that data folder that we added our images to. Okay, and then I guess we can do this Monaco-14, and it's VLW or something like that. Something like that. I think create font will work. You might use load font, but let's see what happens. Ah, it works. Okay. And then we'll see how our kick, snare, hat, kick, right. So what happens is I use the Y. I iterated the Y. What did I do? I must have copied the X to the Y. Yes, I think I copied the X to the Y as well. So in fact, Y is of the smaller one. Actually, oh, right. Okay, so left. We in a much simpler thing here. We just need is this the bigger one? No, this is the smaller one. Sorry. All right, because the image is pushed in, right? So this is the rectangle. Sorry, gosh. So we just want to use copy L. So the text is going to be, this is going to be the label, right? And the X really is just left. It's the same left. And the right is the same right. Is the top. I mean, the top, that Y is the top. So let's run that. That should be me there. Kick, snare. So it puts it at the top. So really, it seems to kind of line up the bottom left corner with the X and Y. That seems to where the text stops, starts, right? And then I guess if we push, it turns it yellow, which is kind of nice. You can make it all one font if you want, or have it glow as well. Okay, but yeah, we can go ahead and maybe either change the position up or down. One thing we can do, for example, is change that initial Y and move everything down a little bit, and then move the font up above the thing. That might be better, or I can put the label on the bottom, whichever you prefer. It seems to be working at the top, so let's scooch everything down. And again, because of the way we have things set up so nicely, we can just change that variable down. So let's make that initial Y 40, instead. All right. And then it looks like I don't want it really sitting right on the bottom of on the top of the button, the text, right? So if we just scooch the Y up slightly, right, we can just say minus, say 5. We'll make a little gap of 5 pixels between the two. So that was easy enough. And that looks pretty good. Of course, you know, our labels don't match up. So you have to just coordinate the samples in your sample folder, the labels, and the pictures, which you could do any and all of. You don't have to do all of them, but it's just a little chance to demonstrate what's that. Okay, great. I think we'll leave that at there. You have a nice functioning sampler that has mouse control as well as keyboard control. I'm not the best drummer. Mouse and keyboard control, labels if you want, visual feedback for mouse over, visual feedback for pressed and released if you want, all of that. And it's just a good exercise in creating a GUI, but also creating responsive animation or responsive graphic objects that respond to your mouse and key presses. And also interaction with the Super Collider or any application of your choice through the OSC communication. Okay, well, good luck with that, and hopefully that helps.